Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host, Flavia Barris, as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media, including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur.
Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today we're meeting with Jeffrey Panik. He is the founder of Balance Wealth Partners and a financial advisor with over 25 years of experience. A U.S. Army veteran and first-generation college graduate, Jeff combines disciplined insight with deep empathy to help pre-retirees navigate the complex landscape of Social Security, Medicare, income planning, and succession strategy. His firm was founded on a simple vision: to help people live well today while preparing wisely for tomorrow. He is the author of Your Future Is Now, a personal finance guide for young adults, and is set to release his upcoming book for pre-retirees. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Great to have you because you are speaking on one of my favorite topics, and it's a little bit, I think it's my favorite because I find that a lot of people need it demystified, and that's just finance and retirement planning and just how to adult. And finance is one of those topics that we're not really taught at the school level the way I think it should be taught. I find a lot of people get launched into adulthood without a really good understanding of, how does finance work and personal finance, and, how do you adult and what are you supposed to do and how do you make wise choices, especially early on. So I'm so happy to have you here, and I can't wait to hear about your story. And first, kick it off by letting us know a little bit about you. How did you end up in finance, and how did this become something that you were so passionate about?
Yeah, so, part of the reason why I kind of went into finance after getting out of the military was because of the mistakes that I made that got me in the military in the first place. I ended up being a first one going to college, didn't really understand very much, ended up taking out a lot of student loans, and ended up in a position where I was going to pay about $1,000 a month for about 10 years to Sallie Mae. The Army had a program where, based on your service, they would pay off the loans while you were in the military, and you could get out of the military with loan free. And so that was very attractive to me. As I was in the military, I started learning about finance, and I thought it was very interesting. I like it because it's constantly changing, and everyone views it a little bit differently. And at the same time, I saw really a lot of confusion around it, especially for people starting out, which makes me very sympathetic because, again, of the issues that I had and the confusion and not really knowing what direction to go. You oftentimes just create a cascade of issues for yourself. A lot of times you don't even know what the problems are until well afterwards.
Well, and for a lot of people listening, like you said before to me, some people are at mile 0, some people are mile 6. If finance journeys were sort of a marathon or something that would be, this journey from A to Z. And listeners, I think there's a lot that we can get out of an expert like you being on the show, whether or not you are at mile 0 or mile 6. So what are some things that people have in common, regardless of where they are in their knowledge or their journey or their own personal planning? What is something that's universal across the board that anybody could apply that you find is not really common knowledge or that a lot of people miss?
I think really what I see a lot of times that creates problems is where you do what other people tell you to do that may not understand your specific situation. And you may do what your neighbor, family member, friend, office worker, whether taking Social Security, whether what type of credit card you use, whether you buy or lease a car, all these things have to be specific to you. I think, one of the biggest challenges, I've been in the industry for about 26 years after I got out of the military. And one of the biggest things that I see really are situations where people are just really uncertain with what to do. They go online and they start doing searches, and there's sponsored ads on there where they're trying to, the sponsors obviously are paying to try to get you to do something. So a lot of times the general advice, you may get 30 million hits from Google if you type in a financial topic, but none of them may have anything whatsoever to do with your specific circumstances.
So I'm an attorney, as you might know, and listeners know. So I help people with estate planning quite often. So that would be like setting up trusts or a will and kind of thinking about the future that way. And I find that one of the reason a lot of people don't even think about that kind of setup or doing that kind of planning is because they might be young and healthy, and the future seems kind of far away, and catastrophes seem sort of remote as possibilities. So do you think that's similar in finance, where a lot of people don't plan for retirement or think ahead, or maybe plan for layoffs or job issues or career changes or all of that, because it just seems so remote and so far off, and it's easier to sort of be head in the sand and not think about it than to dive in? Because I see that in my practice, and I'm assuming that that's one of the things in the world of finance that keeps people from contacting a financial planner or giving some thought to that area.
Yes, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I look at estate and legacy planning. Really, it's imperative to have it at any age, and I think there's a thought process that you don't really have to think about that until you're retired or afterwards. Based upon your health, and your health, how you feel could change in a minute. You could get in an accident. You really have to look at what effect not having the documents and having the proper planning in place has on your family members. And even on your pets for that matter. I mean, things as simple as those you often don't think about, or you just think about, well, I'll just get around to that. And, procrastination is, really I think it's overhanging and overwhelming in finance, because a lot of the terms are foreign. I call it like financial jargon. And it just puts people into a corner where they just they just cut off and shut down. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, with estate planning being one of those, really, you need to have it in place at any age. And I even tell parents, if you have a child going to college, if you don't do the healthcare directive and the HIPAA forms and certain other things, if something happens to them and they're away, it can often be very difficult to find what's even going on with them.
So chilling. I mean, that's one of those things too. Why isn't this more commonly known? And I don't know. It's something we should all just be taught in high school, maybe.
Yeah.
Sometimes like everyone who graduates from high school should just be able to give this advice to their friends and family, like that you just gave, is, hey, when someone's going to college, that person should definitely have thought ahead to who will they designate, because they're an adult now. So they no longer have a parent who can just march into the school office and say, I'm so-and-so's parent,
Yes.
give me information, or I'm making a decision. It changes when we turn 18. And a lot of times people don't think about that. They don't really realize. And I think there's also that issue. Let's talk about 18-year-olds. Kids go away. And I'm saying kids loosely, right? If you're 18, you probably don't feel like a kid, but in a lot of ways, you still haven't reached full maturity. You're now in college. I remember being in college and having all of these tables set up by banks along the
Yes.
side of our quad where we would have lunch and wander around. And they would give you, I don't know, t-shirts or pizza or something fun.
There's frisbees.
What's that?
Frisbees.
Yes, the frisbee's a good one, right? Especially for them. If you give a frisbee out and then people are playing with it in the quad, it's free advertising.
Yes.
And they would be getting these 18-year-olds to sign up for credit cards. And then, they may not be prepared to have a credit card. They may not understand the ramifications. They may sign up, buy something on it, and then forget that they have to set up, how to make the payments every month. And it just goes into default. And, at the ripe old age of 18, they've already got some credit hits, which is just a tragedy. So what do you think? Let's talk about some ideas for society. What would be a way to fix this?
Well, I think the first thing is really having practical consumer finance advice. And, right now, only about 29 of the 50 states have a financial literacy requirement. And unfortunately, the majority of those states have a waiver around it where you could get out of it. And so really, I think that's really the first step. And the other is really to have it written where most people would argue that you learn from other people's mistakes and stories. And in the first book, I really have stories to kind of at the end of the chapters, whether it's on identity theft or estate planning or insurance planning or how do you buy a car. These are all things that we would take at a certain age, you'd start to take for granted. But when you're getting out of high school, if someone hasn't talked to you or helped you with it, you can really make some really bad mistakes that in some ways, or in some cases, I wouldn't say are irreversible, but you're at an extreme disadvantage where you're not able to save. The earlier that you save, compounding is a wonderful thing. But if you're paying all the debt back because you weren't really sure, didn't really understand it, it just redirects the money that could be used for your long-term prosperity.
Well, I like that you brought up your book because it really sounds kind of like the textbook that we should give to people at a certain age so that they are up to speed on all these really important topics. What is that book? Tell us about how that book came to be. What was the inspiration for the book? And what would be in it for anyone who's looking, maybe to buy a gift for someone of the right age or
Yes.
just to read it on their own? Tell us more about it.
Sure. So it really, I consider it an introductory guide to really managing your finances. And I would say, I look at it and I use the example of budgeting. There's certain professionals, certain people that are on TV that say, this is what you have to do. This is how you have to do it. Really, what I've tried to do with the book is make it so I'm not judgmental. I believe that you can, no matter what mistakes you've made, you can always press the restart button. And it's never too, it's never too late to start. And that's the first thing. The second thing is what I want to try to do with the books is really provide options and really help the reader understand what their choices are and not really put them into a corner where I say, this is what you have to do. It's really educating, providing stories. And then, I have QR codes throughout the books that have financial calculators and other supporting information that help the person based upon what they're looking for, whether how much of a car can you afford, how much of a home can you afford, what happens if you start saving now down the road, how do you put together a budget. There are calculators in the books for that are QR codes that are linked to the calculators just to make it easy, because what I found is the harder it is to try to find the information, the easier it is to kind of shut yourself off to it.
Well, and you've been really generous because we always ask guests, is there any kind of resource, anything, any kind of a freebie or value add that you're willing to offer our audience? And I love that you said you could offer a free PDF version, an ebook version of your first book. So for that, I wanted to say thank you so much. And I'll let you sort of give a URL or a place where someone can go for that. And just for all listeners to know, as we say in every episode, we do have our podcast guest gift vault. So it's podcastguestgift.com. And that's where we keep all freebies from all guests who come on the show. But if someone wants to go direct, Jeff, where would they go for that?
You could go to my website, jeffreypanik.com/free book, and you can find it in there. You can click on it and download it. What I've tried to do is put it together as a reference and really to try to help people, because I'm very sympathetic from the background and where I came from, to understand that, every little bit that you can learn goes a long way. And learning doesn't stop when you finish school. It's a consistent ongoing process. And if you can incorporate that in your life, you're going to make mistakes, but it's a matter of learning from them and getting doing the research and getting educated.
So if you could share with us some finance hacks, right? So something that may not be obvious to everyone, but are just really good ideas and sort of quick wins, right? If someone gets off this show, you're done with a podcast, you got to where you're driving or you finished your workout, whatever it is you're doing while you listen to podcasts, and you are now thinking, wow, okay, finance, that's kind of topic of mind right now. What is something that would be something they could check to make sure they've already done, or something that they should implement or put in place, or at least consider, that would be a nice quick win that they could do this week just to
Yes.
get ahead and get further with this area of life?
So I would say I'll give you two things. One is that I would say you want to check and make sure your credit is frozen, and you want to make sure if you have older parents or if you have children that their credit is frozen. By doing that, you really avoid a lot of heartache and a lot of trouble if you are become a victim of identity theft, which is becoming more and more prevalent. And in the books, there are several areas that explain how to do the credit freeze. But I think it really is essential for anyone, whether they're young, adult, or a senior, to really put that in place. The second would be is a website called missingmoney.com. What that allows you to do is go in and search to see if you're owed any money through any of the states that you may have lived in before their abandoned property. So it's a way to find money that you may not even know you have.
Wow, both of those are great tips. So I stand behind both of those. I think that's absolute must do. No reason that everyone listening can't do that today, really, is just to double check on that. And freezing your credit is so smart. These days, there's been so many data breaches in so many places. Your personal data, unfortunately, is probably out there floating around in cyberspace where people who don't have the best intentions can get a hold of it. And freezing your credit, think of it as like two-factor authentication, but for your credit. We now have that for our logging into emails or social media and all kinds of things that we want to keep safe so that someone can't break in. And you should absolutely also do that for one of your most important tools and assets, which is your credit. So let's shift gears, general life advice. So this wouldn't be necessarily finance, but we believe in life balance, work-life balance, and having entrepreneurship not be something that takes over your life. A lot of listeners have their own businesses or aspire to have a business, but we all know that life can become extremely hectic when we're our own boss, sometimes more so than when we had some other boss. And I know you have a lot of demands on your time, but you managed to find the time to write a book and do a lot of things. I know you enjoy your hobbies and spending time with your family. How do you do that as a successful professional? How do you keep yourself sane and keep some of that time in your calendar for the things that are important to you?
I think, one of the things I always say is in the area of what you're referencing, I would say you want to create habits and you want to be consistent with what you do. And you want to have a calendar that is, and again, it's difficult with life, but you want to try to have and keep a reasonable schedule. And then that's different for different people. I mean, I'll probably do more work earlier in the morning when other people will do later in the evening. You want to find what works for you. But, again, it's trial and error, but you really want to look at it and you want to, once you find what works for you, you want to be consistent with it. Consistency has a way of, and repetition really has a way of creating success, I believe. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do to, manage. If people say, well, how do you do the books? It's really a matter of just time segmentation and really habit and just doing it on a repetitious basis.
So, any parting words for our audience? How do people get a hold of you, first of all? Because I think you already mentioned where to get a copy of the book. I assume that's the best place to get in touch or follow. But if there's any other social media accounts or any other place that someone should go to follow and to learn more about finance, I thought your ideas were amazing. Just the quick wins. I'm sure you have a lot more to offer that can be implemented quickly by listeners and readers. Where would people go?
Sure. You could go to my business website, balancewealthpartners.com. You could also go to the website for my books, which is jeffreypanik.com. It has videos and other helpful content. And, what I try to do, and I think is most important, is really to provide information and try to make it so that it's easier to understand, that it's just not it's not calculus. And that's, I think, the problem with a lot of the education system. Everything has become so complicated that you just can't focus more on and try to simplify things, is what I've tried to do with a lot of the books and then even the websites.
So, parting words of wisdom, because I think we touched on procrastination. That it's not even procrastination. A lot of it's just distraction. It's so easy not to do the things that are important to do because we're so distracted by our everyday routine and how busy lives are. And there's so many things to pay attention to, and there's so many shows to stream and so much social media to browse, and there's just so much online shopping that has to be done. And just everything is pulling us away from the things that really probably should take priority, but don't. So for anyone who's out there procrastinating, and again, I don't judge on that because I think we all do it. We all procrastinate even on things that are important. What would you say to help people get off their chair or off their keyboard to take some of this action and to do things like read that book or, make that phone call, make sure that credit's frozen, make sure they've checked for those lost assets that might be out there? What would you say to get us off of our chairs?
So what I would say is that perfect is really the enemy of great or good. And I think sometimes people get so focused on doing everything perfectly or just not really planning that really it's a matter of just having some time and setting it aside to tackle things over time, not to try to do everything all at one time. If you try to freeze your credit, if you try to do the estate documents, if you try to look at your credit cards, maybe refinance or look at how much your bank account is paying and say if you need to get a high yield savings. If you try to do all that one time, you're just not going to do anything probably. So it's really a matter of just breaking it up into bites and working through that. And if you can do that, it's going to be easier, the food analogy, to digest, as well as to get the pieces accomplished so that you can have, put together a good financial profile.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been great chatting with you and kind of focusing and thinking about finance and also sharing with everybody some quick wins as well as some things that are strategic that they should really think about for long-term success, long-term asset protection and asset growth. And, for being on the show, I am so appreciative because your time is valuable. And for you to give up your time to help everybody else improve their lives is a great thing. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness, but money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use a coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.